Welcome to Heartbreaker, your love radio. What would you do if you discovered a betrayal, but decided to keep the secret to protect one last happy moment with your family? In the soft light of the afternoon, Michael found evidence of Laura's betrayal on her phone left on the kitchen counter. Messages exchanged with a stranger, meetings scheduled with the excuse of extra work at the office. The ground seemed to slip from under his feet, but upon hearing the laughter of his children, Tom and Ellie, in the garden, something within him steadied. That evening, as Laura prepared dinner, Michael struggled with his decision. Seated at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee in his hands, he silently observed her. Laura, noticing his gaze, smiled and asked, "Is everything all right, love?" Yes, just thinking about how strange it will be with the house just to ourselves after Tom goes to college," Michael disguised, forcing a smile. Laura nodded, oblivious to his internal turmoil. "It will be a new chapter for us," she said, placing a light kiss on his forehead. That summer was supposed to be the pinnacle of family happiness, but for Michael, each joyful moment was tinged with the shadow of betrayal. He chose to remain silent, deciding to preserve the memory of one last joyful summer for Tom and Ellie, before they left for new beginnings at university. The days passed between barbecues in the backyard and trips to the beach, with Laura always picking up the phone, secretly smiling at messages that Michael knew were not for him. During a farewell party for Tom, Michael watched friends and family, questioning whether he should expose Laura to everyone. But seeing Tom laugh out loud, his heart tightened. He could not destroy this memory for his son. "Do you think he's ready?" Laura asked softly, approaching Michael as they watched Tom tell an animated story. He's more than ready. It's us who might not be," Michael replied, swallowing the bitterness in his throat. When the day to take Tom to the dormitory arrived, Michael loaded the luggage into the car, feeling each movement as if it were a step towards the abyss that would open soon after Tom's departure. He cast furtive glances at Laura, who seemed increasingly distant, immersed in her own secret world. The car was packed with Tom's luggage, boxes of books, and a mix of anxiety and excitement. Michael drove, with Laura beside him and Tom in the back, discussing plans for the first semester. Each time Tom laughed, Michael felt a stab of pain, knowing that these moments of family unity were numbered. "Dad, are you sure the car can handle all this load all the way there?" Tom joked, looking at the piles around him. "This car will take us and your boxes without any problem." "It's been through worse," Michael responded, casting a meaningful look at Laura through the rearview mirror. Laura smiled at Tom and then at Michael, but her smile did not reach her eyes. "It's going to be an adventure, Tom. Your first big adventure alone," she said, her voice full of forced enthusiasm. During the journey, the conversations revolved around college expectations, last-minute advice, and childhood memories. Laura and Michael shared stories from when Tom was little, trying to overcome the unspoken tension that floated between them. "Do you remember that time Tom tried to ride the dog like a horse?" Laura laughed, looking at Michael, seeking common ground in the happy memories. Michael smiled, nodding his head. "I'll never forget. We had to run to catch him before he actually managed it." The laughter lightened the air, but only superficially. When they left Tom at the dormitory, helping him set up his things and giving the last hugs, Michael felt a tightness in his heart. As they said goodbye, Tom held his parents together for a photo, capturing the last portrait of them as an intact family. "Take care, and don't fight too much without me around," Tom joked, not knowing how close to the truth he was. "Always," Michael replied, forcing a smile, while Laura just nodded, holding back tears. The return trip was initially silent. Laura tried to start a conversation a few times, commenting on the campus and how happy Tom seemed. Michael, however, was immersed in his thoughts, each mile increasing his resolve about what needed to be said. Finally, as the last town sign passed them by, Michael turned off the radio. The silence that followed was dense, almost palpable. "Oh, Laura, I know about your boyfriend," he suddenly said, his voice calm but filled with resolution. Laura turned sharply towards him, surprise and fear evident on her face. What?" "Michael, I don't know what you're—" Please, Laura," Michael interrupted, his hand raised to stop more lies. "Don't insult my intelligence." "Not anymore. I know everything. Let's settle this with a divorce." Laura faced him, the mask of confusion disappearing, replaced by a cold resignation. How did you? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that it's over, Michael said, keeping his eyes on the road, but feeling each word as if it were a nail being driven into the coffin of their failed marriage. Laura reclined in the seat, looking at the road ahead, the silence between them more deafening than any argument could be. The rest of the trip was consumed by unspoken thoughts and the inevitable reality of an uncertain future. In the days that followed the return from the trip, Michael and Laura's house was enveloped in tense silence. Laura alternated between fervent denials and emotional pleas, trying somehow to change Michael's decision. "Michael, please, we can fix this. I made a mistake, I know I did, but it's nothing we can't overcome together," Laura implored, following him from room to room as he tried to maintain the routine of the house. Michael, firm in his decision, just shook his head. "No, Laura. Not after months of so blatantly lying. There's nothing you can say that will change what happened." Laura tried various strategies, from denying everything to accusing him of also not being perfect in their marriage. "Do you think I don't know about the times you came home late from work? How can I be sure you were really working?" she fired off one afternoon, her voice laden with desperation and anger. "That's different, Laura. I never cheated on you." "Never," Michael responded, his voice low but filled with indignation. As Laura sought ways to manipulate appearances, inviting friends over for dinners and trying to act as if nothing was wrong, Michael withdrew more and more. He observed, almost like an external spectator, as she laughed and played with friends, trying to convince everyone, and perhaps herself, that their marriage was still solid. At one of these dinners, with the house full of laughter and lively conversations, Laura held Michael's hand under the table, squeezing it as if trying to convey a silent plea for complicity. Michael, in turn, gently withdrew his hand, his expression inscrutable. After the guests had left, Laura confronted him in the kitchen. Why are you doing this? Why are you pushing me away like this? We can pretend until everything is sorted out." Pretending won't fix what's broken, Laura," Michael said calmly, the fatigue from weeks of tension weighing in his words. "I'm not interested in keeping up appearances. I'm interested in honesty and respect, things our marriage has lost." Laura's pleas became more desperate as the reality of an imminent divorce set in. One night, she sat next to Michael on the couch, tears running freely down her face. "I didn't want any of this to happen. I was confused, lost. Please forgive me." Michael looked at her, his heart tightened by her pain, but reminded of the pain he had felt when he discovered the betrayal. "I'm sorry, Laura. I really am. But some things can't be undone." In the following days, as Laura alternated between moments of apparent acceptance and new waves of pleas, Michael began to deal with the divorce process, his heart heavy with the loss not just of a marriage, but of a life he thought he knew. As the news of Michael and Laura's divorce spread, a division formed among friends who had once been considered close and loyal. Michael noticed a growing silence from many who had once frequented his home with laughter and stories. Text messages became more sparse, invitations to social events stopped coming, and responses to his attempts at contact were polite but cold. On a gray afternoon, Michael met with Dan, one of the oldest friends in the group, hoping to understand the situation. Sitting on a park bench, Michael got straight to the point. "Dan, is there something I should know? It seems like everyone has suddenly decided I'm the villain of the story." Dan looked uncomfortably around before responding. "Mike, you know how things are. Laura has been very involved with the group, especially with the women, and she told her version first." "And what is her version, Dan?" "That she was forced to find comfort elsewhere because her husband wasn't giving her enough attention?" Michael asked, bitterness tinging each word. "It's not exactly like that, but you know, things get complicated. People prefer not to take sides, but..." Dan hesitated, searching for the right words. But they did take a side, didn't they?" Michael interrupted, the realization hard as stone. They took her side." Dan sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Laura has been very emotional, talking about how hard things have been for her. People feel sorry for her, Mike. And then there are the kids, the social connections, nobody wants to stir things up more." Michael shook his head, disappointed but not surprised. So, basically, because she cried first, I'm the bad guy." It's not so black and white, but... Dan started but didn't finish. The silence that followed was filled with unspoken truths. Michael stood up, thanking Dan for his time. I appreciate the honesty, Dan. Really. At least now I know where I stand with all of you. In the days that followed, Michael faced the reality of his situation with increasing clarity. The house that had once been filled with friends and laughter now echoed with the sound of his own company. He tried to reach out to other members of the group, only to be met with more of the same distant treatment. On one occasion, while picking up some items at the supermarket, Michael saw two of the friends he had once considered close. They exchanged glances before moving away, choosing a different aisle instead of greeting him. At that moment, the alienation became palpable, as if an invisible barrier had been erected between him and the people with whom he had shared so many years of his life. Returning home, Michael reflected on the irony of the situation. He who had tried to protect everyone's feelings by keeping the truth a secret was now the excluded, the abandoned one. The loneliness of his decision, although made for the good of his family, weighed on him like an undeserved sentence. As Michael navigated the turbulent waters of his impending divorce and social isolation, he began to unravel more about how Laura's betrayals had been cleverly masked by seemingly innocent social events. The most frequent of these were the champagne brunches on the beach organized by the women in their circle of friends. On a hot Saturday afternoon, while scrolling through old photos on his phone, Michael found several of Laura with her friends on the beach, smiling with champagne glasses in hand. Recalling the dates, he realized that these gatherings perfectly coincided with the days Laura had claimed to be spending time with her friends. Determined to understand better, Michael called Jenna, one of the few people in the group who still spoke to him openly. Jenna, can I ask you something about those beach brunches you used to have? Michael began, trying to keep his voice neutral. Oh, sure, Mike. What do you want to know? Jenna replied, her voice filled with carefree joy. Was it always the whole group? I mean, was Laura always with you all the time at these gatherings? He asked, trying to probe without sounding too suspicious. Well, you know, it was kind of a back and forth. Sometimes some of us would leave early, others would arrive later. Laura? She was there, of course, but like all of us, sometimes she had to step out for a bit to take phone calls or something, Jenna explained, her voice revealing a hint of hesitation now that Michael thought about it. And during these outings, did she mention where she was going or who she was meeting? Michael pressed a little further. Not that I recall. Mike, is everything okay? Is this about... Jenna stopped as if fearing she had gone too far. It's all right, Jenna. I'm just trying to understand some things, Michael quickly concluded the call, thanking her for the information. After hanging up, the truth began to take shape in his mind. The brunches were too convenient, a perfect smokescreen for Laura's escapades. Every smile in a photo, every toast with champagne on the beach was now a stab of betrayal disguised as celebration. In the following days, Michael observed his old friend's social media posts, noticing how frequent the group photos on the beach were. There was always a hashtag like #FriendsForever or #SunshineDays, but Laura rarely appeared in the photos for long, usually just enough to make her presence known. Michael's loneliness deepened with each new discovery, not only because of the pain of betrayal but also because of the understanding that his friends not only knew about the infidelity but also helped conceal it. This thought consumed him, and he found himself increasingly hesitant to trust the people around him. Over time, the brunch gatherings and happy beach photos became symbols not of friendship and joy, but of deceit and pain. Michael knew that facing this new reality would be one of the greatest challenges of his life. The champagne that once symbolized celebration now tasted bitter with betrayal. After the disturbing revelations about the beach brunches, Michael felt a growing need to seek more concrete answers. The trust he had placed in Laura was shattered, and with it, his ability to accept anything at face value. That's when he decided to install a GPS tracker in Laura's car, a small device he discreetly placed under the passenger seat one morning while Laura was in the shower. A few days later, Michael sat with his laptop open, monitoring Laura's car movements. He saw the vehicle traveling to areas he didn't recognize as part of her routine. Why would she be on this side of town? Michael murmured to himself as he jotted down the addresses and compared them on Google Maps. The travel pattern led him to a house in a quiet neighborhood, far from the beaches and cafes Laura often mentioned. His curiosity turned into resolve, and he decided to check the phone records, which confirmed his suspicions, numerous lengthy calls to the same unknown number, all occurring during these mysterious outings. Who is this number? Why is she talking to this person so much? Michael wondered, each click bringing more questions than answers. Determined to confront Laura, Michael waited for her one evening when she came home later than usual. When she entered the room, he was sitting there, the atmosphere tense. "Oh, Laura, we need to talk about where you've really been when you say you're with your friends or at work," Michael began, trying to keep calm. Laura, visibly tired, sighed before responding. Michael, we've been through this already. I was with the girls, you know how those gatherings are." No, I don't know, because the GPS shows that you've been to completely different places." "And these calls? Who is this number, Laura?" Michael interrupted, showing her the notes he had made. Laura hesitated, her face pale. "It's just a friend, someone from the classic car club. It's nothing serious." "Nothing serious?" "Laura, it's hours and hours of conversations." "And the visits to that house? What's going on there?" Michael pressed, each word heavier than the last. Laura finally broke eye contact, unable to maintain the facade. Michael, She began, but stopped, realizing that the lies wouldn't work anymore. Michael, sensing that there was much more to the story than Laura was willing to admit, felt a mixture of relief and devastation. Relief to know that his suspicions weren't unfounded, and devastation at the depth of the betrayal. In the following days, Michael dedicated himself to fully understanding the extent of the betrayal. He analyzed more records, followed the trail of lies, and each discovery was like a blow, uncovering not only Laura's infidelity but also a network of complicity among friends he once called family. With these discoveries, Michael's decision became clear. He would not only confront Laura but also prepare for the legal and personal repercussions of a divorce that, now he knew, was inevitable. The world he thought he knew had unraveled, and it was time to build something new from the ruins of disappointment. After the harsh reality of Laura's betrayals had been revealed, Michael made a conscious decision to emotionally distance himself to protect himself. He adopted the gray rock technique, a method of minimal and non-reactive interaction, turning himself into a figure as emotionally expressionless as a gray rock. Every time Laura tried to start a conversation, Michael responded with short, neutral phrases. Yes, no, and I don't know became the standard tools of his communication. He avoided any subject that could lead to deeper or emotional discussions. One afternoon, as Laura prepared dinner, she tried to bring up a common friend's birthday party. Mike, did you see that Jenna's party is next Friday? Are you coming with me? I don't know. Maybe, Michael replied, without looking up from the book he was reading. Laura, frustrated with his lack of engagement, insisted, You hardly talk to me anymore, Michael. We're living in the same house like strangers. Michael closed the book, looking directly at her. It's what's healthiest for me right now, he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. In the following days, Laura tried various tactics to break down the barrier Michael had erected. She attempted to reminisce about past memories, discuss future travel plans, or even talk about Tom and Ellie, but Michael kept his responses brief and dispassionate. Do you remember our trip to the lake? It was so much fun. Don't you want to try that again? Laura tried one evening at dinner. I'm not interested, Michael replied, focusing on his plate. Laura, realizing that attempts at reconnection were futile, began to show signs of weariness. Why are you doing this? Why can't we at least try to talk about things? She asked one evening, her words laden with despair. Talking won't change what happened, Michael asserted, his decision clear. I'm doing what I need to do to move forward. The gray rock technique not only helped Michael maintain his sanity during a tumultuous time but also made him realize how emotionally affected he had been by past events. He began to value the space he had created, finding moments of peace in reading, walking, and tending to his garden. These activities became his refuge, places where betrayal and pain couldn't reach him. Laura, on the other hand, faced the reality of a marriage that was effectively over, and each failed attempt to reconnect with Michael only served to highlight the growing distance between them. The house, once filled with laughter and conversation, now echoed only with the sound of two hearts living worlds apart. As divorce proceedings unfolded, Michael found himself navigating the cold waters of the legal and emotional reality of undoing years of marriage. Documents were signed, meetings with lawyers scheduled, and with each step, the finality of his relationship with Laura crystallized. On a cloudy morning, Michael sat face to face with Laura and their lawyers in a sterile conference room, where they would discuss the terms of the divorce. The air was thick with palpable tension. So, let's discuss the division of assets? Laura's lawyer began, efficiently opening his folder. Michael nodded, his expression unwavering. I'm willing to be fair. I'm not here to take everything from anyone, I just want this to be settled equitably. Laura looked at him, her eyes searching for any sign of the man she had shared her life with. Michael, I truly regret everything, she murmured, almost inaudibly. A regret doesn't change the past, Laura, Michael replied coldly, shifting his gaze to the documents in front of him. As the process progressed, the reality of what his life was becoming weighed heavily on Michael. He often found himself reflecting on the years gone by, questioning every decision, every happy moment, wondering where exactly it all began to unravel. During a solitary walk through the park where they used to stroll together, Michael pondered aloud. I truly believed we were happy. Was it all a lie? He asked the wind, not expecting an answer. The following weeks brought news that Laura was already living with her new partner, a fact that pierced Michael's heart with a mixture of sadness and irony. Replaced before the ink even dries, he bitterly commented in a session with his therapist. How do you feel about that? The therapist inquired, encouraging him to explore his feelings. Like I was never enough, Michael admitted, his voice low. But also, there's a strange relief. Like I'm finally free to breathe. The divorce process finally concluded with the signing of the last documents on a gray autumn day. Exiting the lawyer's office, feeling the weight of the papers in his briefcase, Michael felt simultaneously empty and hopeful. Looking out at the horizon, he reflected on the future. What comes next? He wondered. Determined to rebuild his life, step by step, Michael knew the road would be long and at times lonely. But he also recognized that, for the first time in a long while, it was a path he had chosen for himself, free from the shadows and lies that had clouded his recent years. In the days that followed, Michael began to find small moments of peace and even joy, rediscovering forgotten hobbies and reconnecting with old friends who had drifted away during his marriage. Each step forward was a step out of disillusionment, toward a new life defined by himself. After the divorce was finalized, a new chapter began for Michael, though still overshadowed by the repercussions of the separation. The situation became particularly delicate during spring break when his children, Tom and Ellie, returned home and were introduced to Laura's new friend, who now lived with her. Tom and Ellie arrived at Michael's home for a planned dinner before visiting Laura. Sitting at the table, Tom, always the most observant, cautiously questioned his father. So, Mom mentioned she has someone new. Do you know anything about that? Michael looked at his children, wanting to shield them from further pain. Yes, she told me. I think you'll meet him tomorrow, right? Ellie, apprehensive, played with her food. Yes, she said he's nice and they're just friends, but it seems kind of fast, don't you think? Sometimes people move at different paces, Ellie, Michael replied, choosing his words carefully. The next day, after the meeting with their mother and her new partner, Tom and Ellie returned to Michael's home, clearly uncomfortable and confused. She was different, Dad, Ellie confessed. She was acting, I guess. Very excited, very smiley. And there were tears, but I don't know, it seemed fake. Michael sighed, knowing well Laura's ability to manipulate situations. Sometimes people try too hard to show that they're okay. Maybe that's what you saw. I don't want to pick sides, but it makes me feel weird, Tom admitted, frustrated. You don't have to pick sides, Michael reassured them, keeping his voice calm. You can love your mom and still feel confused or upset about the things she does. That's normal. Michael's honesty helped Tom and Ellie process their feelings in a way that respected their own experiences and emotions. Meanwhile, Michael continued to reflect on his own path forward. On a clear afternoon, while walking through the park he once frequented with Laura, Michael thought aloud, "The divorce was just the end of a chapter, not the whole book. I now have the chance to write something new for myself." He began to devote more time to his passions, such as photography and nature walks, finding in these activities a refuge and a source of renewal. New friendships began to form, some through hiking groups, others through photography courses, offering Michael a new sense of community and belonging. Over time, he realized that resilience wasn't about avoiding pain, but about learning to move through it with grace and hope. "I may not control everything that happens to me," Michael reflected, watching the sun set over the lake in the park, "but I can choose how to respond and grow from it." Thus, surrounded by the gentle glow of dusk, Michael felt for the first time in a long while a genuine sense of peace and anticipation for all that was to come.